You probably bought a squeezy bottle of honey from Woolies or Coles this week, thinking it was the safest, purest thing sitting in your kitchen pantry. You drizzle it over your morning porridge, stir it into your tea, or feed it to your kids, assuming you are giving them pure, natural, liquid gold. Here is what the glossy label and the cute little plastic bear are not telling you. Honey is officially one of the most faked, adulterated, and heavily laundered food products on the planet. Today, we are cracking open the dark underbelly of the Australian honey market. We audited the most popular brands sitting on supermarket shelves right now, and 10 of them cannot reliably prove what is actually inside the jar or where it came from. We are talking about the massive retail giants you trust with your family's grocery budget every week. Woolworths, Coles, ALDI, Capilano, names built into Australian domestic life for generations. Out of the ocean of options cluttering the health food and condiment aisles, only 4 brands managed to walk through our investigative gauntlet completely clean. The brand that will make your jaw hit the floor is not the cheap home brand tucked on the bottom shelf. It is the ultra-premium bottle sitting proudly in the organic health section, sporting a heavy price tag and bold claims of raw purity across the front label. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how the global supply chain turns bee vomit into industrial syrup, how to spot the red flag terminology corporate lawyers use to dodge Australian consumer laws, 4 dead simple tests you can run in your kitchen tonight in under 60 seconds to expose fake honey, and the exact 4 brands actually worth your hard-earned Aussie dollars. Before we name and shame the brands in your pantry, we need to talk about how real honey is made and how the industrial food machine systematically ruins it for profit. Honey is not a manufactured commodity. It is an intricate biological masterpiece. Honeybees forage across millions of flowers, collecting nectar, which is mostly water and complex plant sugars. They carry it back to the hive, pass it between workers, and mix it with natural enzymes like invertase, breaking those complex sugars into simple glucose and fructose. The bees fan their wings over the honeycomb to evaporate moisture until it drops below 18%. Then, they seal it with beeswax. That low moisture content, combined with natural acidity and hydrogen peroxide generated by bee enzymes, gives real honey its immortal shelf life and antibacterial properties. When you eat genuine honey, you consume raw enzymes, antioxidants, trace minerals, and microscopic grains of local pollen that give every harvest a unique geographical fingerprint. Enter the industrial food supply chain. Honeybees can only produce a limited amount of honey each season. Hive maintenance costs money, beekeepers need fair wages, and weather is unpredictable. But global consumer demand for cheap, uniform sweetness is bottomless. So how does the industry bridge that massive economic gap? They cheat. The most common trick is ultra-filtration and extreme heat treatment. Manufacturers blast raw honey through industrial microfilters under pressure and heat it well over 65 degrees Celsius. This strips out every grain of pollen and cooks off delicate, heat-sensitive enzymes. Why spend money to strip out the healthiest components of honey? Because pollen is the forensic fingerprint of a hive. Without pollen, no independent laboratory can use melissopalinology to trace where that honey was harvested, which plants the bees visited, or which country it originated from. Once you wipe away the pollen, you wipe away the crime scene. Stripping pollen opens the door to secondary food fraud, or economically motivated adulteration. Massive syndicates dilute genuine honey with cheap, industrially produced C4 sugar syrups derived from corn, sugarcane, or rice. Rice syrup is particularly insidious because its chemical signature is specifically engineered to bypass standard isotopic testing. To bypass anti-dumping tariffs and biosecurity regulations, this adulterated syrup is shipped through third-party transshipment hubs across Asia and South America, a practice known as honey laundering. By the time that golden liquid lands on Australian shores, it has been blended, boiled, diluted, and stripped into hyper-processed industrial syrup, completely void of its natural health benefits. The cleverest part of this corporate illusion is how the industry conditions us to evaluate quality. We have been brainwashed into thinking that crystal-clear, runny golden syrup that never hardens is the gold standard. That is an absolute lie. Minimally processed, genuine honey is not meant to look like clear amber plastic year-round. Real honey naturally crystallizes over time because glucose separates from water and forms solid crystals. Real honey changes color from pale amber in spring to deep molasses tones in late autumn, depending on which Australian eucalypts or wildflowers were blooming. When a brand offers absolute consistency across every batch, every season, and every year, they are not offering superior natural quality. They are offering an industrial manufacturing achievement that has flattened nature into a predictable profit margin. Now that you know how the game is rigged, let us break down the exact brands failing the purity test on Australian shelves. Starting our list of 10 compromised options at number 10, we have Woolworths Everyday Essential Honey. Sitting at around $5 for a 500-gram squeeze bottle, it is the default option for millions of Aussie families doing their weekly shop. Woolies presents this as straightforward value, but Woolworths does not own a single beehive. They outsource their supply chain to massive third-party commercial packers who source cheap bulk honey from international suppliers. Independent testing commissioned by consumer advocate group Choice and nuclear magnetic resonance testing labs previously raised alarm bells regarding store-brand honeys in Australia, uncovering evidence of heavy ultra-filtration and potential C4 sugar syrup dilution. When you microfilter honey to make it look crystal clear on a Woolies shelf, you strip out every grain of pollen. Without pollen, there is no biological fingerprint to prove whether this honey came from an Australian eucalypt forest or a dodgy industrial vat overseas. The texture is uniform, sickly sweet, and lacks any complex floral aroma. You are paying $10 a kilo for glorified sugar water designed for a 3-year shelf life. If you thought Coles was any better, think again. Coming in at number 9 is Coles Community Co. Pure Honey. At roughly $5.50 for a squeeze bottle, Coles uses warm imagery to imply they support local Aussie growers. But when you turn the tub around, the fine print tells a different story. Coles faced intense scrutiny when legal teams and independent food scientists presented lab data showing that imported store-brand honey blends sold in major Australian supermarkets failed official purity testing. While corporate lawyers disputed the findings and technical legal loopholes protected them from formal prosecution, the structural problem remains unchanged. It is heavily ultra-filtered, heated to high temperatures to prevent crystallization, and routinely blended across international batches to maintain a dead consistent taste profile year-round. Real Australian honey naturally changes taste and colour between spring and autumn, depending on rainfall and native blossom cycles. When every bottle tastes identical in March, July, and December, you are tasting an industrial manufacturing process, not nature. It is an anonymous, untraceable blend wearing a trusted Australian supermarket badge. Moving on to number 8, Aldi Bramwell's Pure Honey. At around $4.99 for a 500-gram jar, Aldi wins the price war. If you are pinching pennies during a cost of living crisis, this seems like an absolute bargain. But let us run the cold, hard numbers on commercial beekeeping economics. A single hive in Australia yields roughly 25 to 35 kilograms of honey per year. Factor in hive transport, biosecurity compliance, labour, extraction equipment, packaging, and retail margins, and it is physically impossible to produce, bottle, and sell genuine raw honey at $4 a kilo without cutting massive corners. Aldi achieves this price point by sourcing massive industrial batches that are heavily heat-treated to speed up bottling lines and pass through ultra-fine pressure filters. The result? Zero natural enzymes, zero pollen, and zero health benefits. It is pure liquid sugar optimized for price efficiency. If you are itching to check your own pantry right now, hit that subscribe button because the corporate tricks only get rougher from here. At number 7, we have Community Co. Honey, found prominently on the shelves of local IGA stores across the country. IGA prides itself on being the local, independent alternative to the big two duopoly, so shoppers naturally assume their community brand carries higher ethical standards. But Community Co. relies on the exact same opaque third-party packing networks as the corporate giants. The label uses slippery, legally ambiguous terms like blended from local and imported ingredients. What percentage is local? 10%? 5%? The label refuses to tell you because Australian food labelling laws contain massive loopholes that allow packers to hide exact proportions. Sourcing shifts from batch to batch, depending on global commodity prices, without a single word changing on the plastic tub. You are paying a premium price at your local grocer for an unverifiable international blend that provides zero transparency to the consumer. Number 6 brings us to a legacy household name, Capilano Pure Australian Honey, in the classic upside-down squeeze bottle. Selling for around $8 to $9 at Woolies and Coles, Capilano is practically an Australian cultural icon. Generations of Aussies grew up with it on their breakfast table. But Capilano's commercial dominance was rocked by a massive national investigation when lab tests conducted by Crayenbuhl Laboratories in Germany using nuclear magnetic resonance testing analysed samples of commercial honey sold in Australia, including blended products packed by Capilano's parent company. The test revealed that an alarming percentage of samples showed markers consistent with adulteration, specifically rice syrup dilution. Capilano defended its reputation, pointing out that official government testing methods like C4 isotope testing passed their products. But experts pointed out that C4 testing is blind to modern C3 syrups like rice syrup. Capilano has since shifted heavily toward 100% Australian positioning for its flagship line, but their historic reliance on international blending proved that even Australia's biggest brand prioritised industrial scale over unyielding purity. You are paying top dollar for a heavily processed, pasteurised commercial product that has had its natural vitality boiled away. At number 5, we step into the warehouse retail space with Members Mark honey from Costco, Australia. Selling in massive 3-kilogram bulk jugs for under $30, this is the go-to for big families, commercial bakers, and meal preppers. Value per gram looks unbeatable on paper, but bulk industrial honey operations face immense processing challenges. Moving thousands of litres of honey through commercial pumps requires heating the liquid to extreme temperatures, which destroys delicate heat-sensitive enzymes like diastase and invertase. Furthermore, tracing bulk multi-container shipments back to specific Australian apiaries is a logistical impossibility. When you buy honey in a 3-kilogram industrial tub, you trade away every single medicinal and nutritional benefit of raw honey purely for cheap bulk calories. Number 4 is where the illusion really starts to crumble. Woolworths Macro Unfiltered Honey. Positioned in the health food aisle right next to organic oats and almond milks, this product commands a hefty markup at over $12 a jar. The glass packaging feels premium, the rustic font screams small batch craft quality, and the label boasts minimal processing. But here is the catch that corporate marketing departments hope you never figure out. Macro Unfiltered still undergoes significant pasteurization heat treatments during industrial packaging to prevent crystallization on supermarket shelves. Moreover, organic certifications on honey are wildly misleading. Bees forage up to 5 kilometers away from their hive in every direction. Unless a beekeeper places their hives in the absolute middle of a pristine, certified national park, it is physically impossible to guarantee those bees did not feast on neighbouring suburban gardens or commercial agricultural fields sprayed with chemical pesticides, synthetic herbicides, and neonicotinoids. You are paying double the price of a standard bottle for a marketing halo that nature itself cannot guarantee. Stepping into the top 3 most disappointing entries, number 3 is Nature Nate's 100% raw and unfiltered honey, widely sold across Australian health food stores, specialty grocers, and online retailers for upwards of $15 to $18 a bottle. The packaging looks like an artisan farmer's market dream, with bold claims of purity stamped everywhere. But Nature Nate's was slapped with massive class action lawsuits overseas, alleging that their raw honey was diluted with cheap corn and rice syrups, and that their processing temperatures were high enough to kill off the enzymes that define raw status under international standards. Instead of releasing comprehensive open-source lab reports to clear their name, their legal team immediately moved to dismiss the court cases on technicalities. When a brand charges top-tier craft prices while hiding behind courtroom maneuvers, their slick marketing claims lose every shred of credibility. Number 2 is the ultimate betrayal of customer trust. Kirkland's Signature Honey from Costco, Australia. Costco built an absolute empire in Australia on the promise that its Kirkland in-house brand delivers uncompromising quality at wholesale prices. Aussies trust that big red logo blindly, but Kirkland's Signature Honey was caught in the exact same legal net, named in major adulteration filings alleging sugar syrup dilution, aggressive ultra-filtration, and untraceable supply chains. Bringing home a massive 2-kilogram Kirkland jug to feed your kids every morning under the assumption that it is a healthy, wholesome superfood is a tragic mistake. If those lab allegations hold true, you are pouring nothing more than expensive, glorified corn syrup over their cereal, stripped of all antioxidants, enzymes, and medicinal compounds. Finally, sitting at number 1 on our skip list is the entire supermarket private label model itself. The ultimate fake honey is not one single rogue brand. It is the commercial framework engineered by retail duopolies to maximize profit margins at the expense of consumer health. The private label system relies on anonymous supply chains, outsourced contract packers, zero published lab transparency, aggressive heat pasteurization, and pollen stripping filtration. They stamp the word pure on the front because in Australia the word pure carries zero legal definition or enforcement standard under Food Standards Australia-New Zealand codes. It is a meaningless marketing word designed to exploit your trust. You cannot trace it, you cannot verify it, and you cannot test it without an advanced laboratory spectrometer. It is an unverifiable commercial illusion, and it is time we stop putting it in our shopping trolleys. Right, here comes the part that made watching this far worth it. We have dragged 10 compromised commercial brands through the mud, exposed how corporate packers strip out pollen to erase supply chain tracks, and shown how sugar syrups dilute your family's grocery budget. Now, let us pivot to the good guys. These are 4 genuine, high-integrity options available right here in Australia that actually pass independent laboratory scrutiny, maintain full biological traceability, and leave their natural pollen completely intact. Option number 4 is Beechworth honey, accessible at virtually every Woolworths, Coles, and IGA across Australia. Beechworth sits around $7 to $8 for a 400-gram squeeze bottle, or $15 for a large tub. Founded in country Victoria by a multi-generational beekeeping family, Beechworth built their entire brand identity on absolute transparency long before food fraud hit national headlines. They strictly use 100% Australian honey, working directly with a verified network of over 100 local Aussie beekeepers. Every single batch is tested using nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy before it hits supermarket shelves to guarantee zero C3 or C4 sugar syrup contamination. The sensory profile is classic, rich, and unmistakably eucalypt. Warm, slightly earthy, with deep malt undertones that cheap imported blends simply cannot imitate. It is slightly more expensive than home brand sugar syrup, but you are paying for independent lab testing, local Australian jobs, and absolute supply chain certainty. Option number 3 takes quality a step further. Wild Nectar organic Australian honey, stocked at Harris Farm Markets, Woolworths, and specialty health stores for roughly $10 for a 350-gram glass jar. Wild Nectar operates out of the pristine, unpolluted bushlands of New South Wales. Unlike commercial brands hiding behind vague organic claims, Wild Nectar places their hives deep within certified organic national park boundaries and native state forests, miles away from agricultural chemical spraying. They practice cold extraction, meaning the honey is spun out of the comb without applying damaging pasteurization heat. The result? Active enzymes, raw antioxidants, and natural pollen grains remain completely intact inside the jar. The texture is thick, velvety, and naturally crystallizes into a smooth, creamy spread over time, exactly what real honey is supposed to do. Independent palynology testing confirms their pollen profile matches native Australian floral species like yellowbox and stringybark. It is an ideal option for families seeking pristine environmental purity without needing a specialist farm pass. Option number 2 is Archibald's Pure Australian Honey, available at Woolworths and independent grocers for around $9 to $10 for a 680-gram tub. Family-owned and packing honey since 1959, Archibald's represents the gold standard of single-origin and regional Australian honeys. They specialize in monofloral varieties like ironbark, red gum, and yellowbox. Monofloral means hives are strategically placed in specific blooming forests, so bees harvest nectar from one dominant tree species. This gives the honey a distinct, complex flavor profile that changes radically from season to season. Yellowbox is light, sweet, and naturally high in fructose, meaning it resists crystallization longer without needing artificial heat or filtration. Ironbark is deep, dark, and packed with complex minerals. Archibald's keeps their honey raw and coarsely strained, meaning visible specks of beneficial bee pollen and propolis naturally linger in the jar. They openly publish supply chain credentials, proving that you do not need expensive imported jars to get genuine, unmanipulated honey. Finally, option number 1, the undisputed champion at the top of our list, is your local farmers market beekeeper. After auditing 10 commercial giants and 3 certified Australian retail brands, the ultimate honey winner carries no national television advertising budget, no corporate legal team, and often uses a simple label printed at home. When you buy a jar directly from a local apiarist at your weekend farmers market, Harris Farm community stall, or roadside farm stand, you completely bypass the global industrial supply chain. You can look the beekeeper dead in the eye and ask 2 simple, revealing questions. Is this honey raw and cold extracted? And where exactly were your hives situated during this harvest? A genuine local beekeeper will happily tell you the exact valley, forest, or paddock where their bees were foraging. The honey is raw, bursting with living enzymes, packed with local pollen that can even help desensitize your immune system to seasonal hay fever, and completely untainted by industrial heat or microfiltration. It is as close to dipping your finger straight into a honeycomb as humanly possible, and every dollar goes directly into supporting local Australian biodiversity. Now that you know which jars to leave on the supermarket shelf, here are 5 simple rules you can use to audit any honey in under 60 seconds. Rule 1. Check the ingredient label for the words local and imported blend. If the label refuses to state 100% Australian honey, put it straight back. It is almost certainly padded with cheap overseas rice syrup. Rule 2. Look for explicit mention of cold extracted or raw. If it says pasteurized, ultra-filtered, or pure without processing details, you are buying heat-damaged sugar water. Rule 3. Run the cold water test tonight. Drop a solid spoonful of honey into a glass of cold tap water without stirring. Real, dense Australian honey sinks immediately to the bottom and forms a thick, solid lump that resists dissolving. Adulterated syrup thinned with water or rice glucose instantly clouds the glass and disperses before your spoon hits the bottom. Rule 4. Embrace crystallization. If a jar sitting in your pantry turns thick, grainy, and opaque over winter, do not throw it away, celebrate. Chemistry dictates that real honey crystallizes. Smooth, crystal-clear liquid that stays runny for 3 years is a massive red flag. Rule 5. Run the price reality check. If a brand sells a kilo of honey for under $8 Australian, the math simply does not stack up for the beekeeper, which means something industrial made up the difference. At the end of the day, food fraud thrives on consumer convenience and slick corporate branding. Mainstream supermarkets want you to believe all golden liquid in a plastic squeeze bottle is created equal. It is not. You now possess the exact knowledge to cut through the marketing noise, spot legal loopholes, and protect both your family's health and your household budget. Which of these 10 brands is sitting in your pantry right now? Let me know down in the comments below. I reply to as many as I can. Share this video with a mate who still buys $1.99 home brand honey thinking they are saving money, and subscribe so you do not miss our next supermarket expose. Thanks for watching. Stop trusting glossy labels and always buy honey